Arlene.
Thank you. Can I just highlight a couple of things from my report? So last week was an incredibly busy week. As you know, we had the state of emergency and the preparation for the ex-tropical cyclone Gita. Then on was it Wednesday, you approved the draft long-term plan to go up for consultation. As the Mayor has said, and I agree with, that this is a particularly difficult long-term plan, balancing rates increases with earthquake recovery and regeneration, business as usual, and the aspirations of our community. And there will be really difficult decisions to make. As we go into the consultation period and hear the things that people need to balance against those things. And then, of course, we have the February 22nd anniversary as well. So I'd like to thank both staff and elected members for all their support in actually getting those things through last week. The other thing I'd like to highlight to you is the work around My Council. This is really a very large transformation, business transformation and cultural change project in the organisation enabled by IT. So we've often had concerns around our interactions with our community and our inability to use technology to improve that. So what that starts with is from the 1st of February a new cash desk that allows cash receipting at service centres, so it's much more streamlined and digital. We'll also use it for the long-term plan submissions and making it quicker and easier to process submissions and for people to engage with us. But some of the significant work that will happen then will be around the 200,000 service requests that we get each year and looking to modernise and digitalise those, standardise our processes and be able to close the loop with our citizens. And then also so things around, requests for wheelie bins, graffiti, property management, transport parks, the whole range of areas in there, and to move to online self-service and payments as well later in the year. So it's a big piece of work, but will actually improve the ability for our residents to actually interact with the council.
Great, thank you very much indeed, Carleen, for the report and also for your comments on it here today. Are there any questions for the Chief Executive on her report? So, Pauline Dion-Fell.
Thank you. Look, just a bit of clarification on the drinking water paragraph on the, I think it's page 2 of your report.
Yes.
So, do I read this to see that we're not going to require as much chlorine as perhaps we thought we would, when it says only needs to dose enough chlorine to kill pathogens that may contaminate the wellhead. There is no need to maintain the chlorine residuals throughout the network. And then the second question is that it's a bit unclear. Therefore, if all wells at a pump station can be signed off as secure by an expert in wellhead security assessments and are agreed to be secure by the assessor, there may be no need to install a temporary chlorination equipment on those pump stations. So does that read that as each pump station is signed off, that pump station no longer needs chlorine in it?
I'll start with that first. So that's correct. It's about the security of the boreheads. And we have pump stations across a number of boreheads, and it's a network of those. In some areas, of course, the networks are connected, in which case it will mean many more boreheads have to be secure and approved. So there's a chance that, depending on how they're repaired and made secure, that you'll be able to progressively reduce the amount of temporary chlorination. However, in the reticulation system, it will still mean that from other networks there may be a combination there. In terms of the first one, I'll give you my lay understanding of the issue. So because we're not treating a transgression or an infection of our water is still good, and our reticulation system is fine. We're treating at the point where there's potential
risk.
Contamination. And so it's a preventative treatment as opposed to treating a contamination that's actually there. And so what that means is, that, as I understand it, is that it's a lower risk and lower level that needs to be managed rather than through the whole reticulation system. It's at that point.
Right, so that should be a lesser taste that people would pick up in the water.
Yes, and it may be just at the beginning that it's an issue for people.
So when you say residual, that's when a lot of chlorine's put in and it goes right through the whole system.
That's right, and it stays at a certain level
yeah.
within the system because it's treating rather than just as we're trying to prevent any contamination.
Good, well, that's encouraging. Thank you.
Thank you. Dion.
I just wanted to get a clarity on the building consenting and resource consenting. Do you have any idea in the building consenting how we're tracking in terms of our projections?
Our projections, I think from memory, there's a 17% decrease from what was budgeted.
Yeah, that's in the resource consenting, but in the building consenting, it doesn't actually say.
Oh, right. Yes, I don't have it off the top of my head. Sorry about that. I can get you that. It still continues to decline. There's some suggestion that with new legislation that comes in around insulation, particularly in walls, that may again produce a spike in consenting. But at the moment, it's certainly continuing to decline over time.
Is there any risk to us in our LTP because of this decline? Is there any risk that our growth projections are out?
Not in our growth projections, no. So in the long-term plan, the forecasts around building consent is much better in terms of understanding what's actually happening, and the work around things like the settlement review that's being done across Greater Christchurch will also help us with that as well.
Thank you. Phil.
Thanks, Carleen. On our page 160, under the strategic policy, it's good to see staff have been doing that work. I'm just really flagging just about how, in fact, that work might come to the government's part of council too, and how we might develop a process for that.
Yeah, so it's a reasonably big project within the organisation to align the work that's going on across the organisation to the strategic priorities that the councillors have identified, and we can certainly update you with that. So, through a briefing to understand where everything fits.
Thank you, Vicky, and then Jamie.
Just going back to the chlorination, because that was a really interesting paragraph. So how much less would we need to put into the water than, say, Auckland or Wellington currently use?
No, I can't possibly tell you that, and I'm not sure that even Dave could tell you that. But
is that John?
No, I'm not sure. We will be able to do that once we've got the system. I think you've got to recognise there's very, very low organics in it, so the amount of chlorine that we will be putting in is very low. But because there's very low organics, it will travel a long way through the network. So basically, you'll get that. Now, probably we will need a few months of operations for the things to settle down. We will be dosing, then we have to test for just that residual for a period down so that it is sitting there for a contact time. So.
Okay, and the second part of it in relation to the secure wellheads, is there a network of wellheads that would be signed off now such that they, or by the end of the month, such that there wouldn't need to be chlorinated in those wellheads?
No, because the issues are spread across the city. The question is whether we can take some of the smaller networks and focus on those.
Yes.
And I think that's part of the planning in terms of how we move forward with this.
I just wonder, because there will be huge interest in this, if when John reports next to the ITI committee, if he could cover some of that in a bit more depth. Yeah.
We certainly can, and by that time we're still having discussions with the drinking water assessors about the final details, and so basically I'm not sure when the next city committee is, but whenever the next city committee is, we will certainly have a far more detailed of what it'll do. Obviously we'll then be able to report back to you on operational monitoring and things like that once the thing's up and running.
Yeah, clearly this whole thing's an area of interest, that's fine.
Yeah. And so we'll also be putting information out to our residents around timing and what it means and those sorts of things, but also, you know, that if you put, as I understand it, water in a jug in the fridge and let it sit there, then there's less taste issues and so forth.
And the other issue that came up over and again was a place that people could get unfluoridated water. So if we could cover that as well.
We will cover that, but that obviously has got some really risks involved and some real issues, probably more risky than taking water. But we can cover that in a. We've looked at that. It'd be fair to say that we, periodically have transgressions, and the amount that we need to dose into the system is very, very, very light, and so you do find. Well, we haven't found a myriad of complaints from any of those occasional transgressions.
All right, thank you very much. Moving on, Jamie.
With the My Council one, are we going to get reporting via that IT project rollout, probably like via finance and performance or something?
You want a briefing and some an update on it? It's a really.
I don't know if a briefing's necessary, but just maybe some governance oversight, just to ensure, that as far as a health check sort of goes, that everything's looking good. Because these things, I think do need governance input, not domination, but certainly oversight to some degree.
A risk register.
Yeah, exactly.
It did sound familiar. That is coming to my committee. Yeah.
So if it's on the risk register, then even more importantly, to get some governance oversight.
So
it comes into Phil's committee. It's being reported regularly.
Social and community. So are you requesting it's reported elsewhere?
Well, I think it's more of a financial thing, personally. But
Look, everything has financial implications. I mean,
well, I'd say an IT project rollout fits perfectly in a finance committee, Phil.
Well, if it's on the risk register, audit and risk is one place where we certainly could have some oversight. It strikes me that the customer benefit side of it certainly belongs with Phil's committee, because there's an effect on how customers interact with council. Yeah. But agreed, Jamie, the financial oversight part of it and the risk, because it is such a large project, and the risks that are inherent in these type of projects, audit and risk is probably the right place for that to land. If it's on the risk register, it allows us to pick it up there.
Yeah, audit and risk or finance and performance, but I guess the question then is going back to, is there a place at a governance level, committee level, for reporting on the IT project rollout?
Well,
or if not, can we?
The answer is that it is. It is coming to my committee, Jeremy. So, and then those minutes or discussion will go to council.
All right. So the answer is that it's going to Phil's committee, but there's the opportunity for oversight at audit and risk.
Okay, this feels messy But, okay.
Can I just add that this Innovation and Sustainable Development Committee has the delegations for council communications?
Okay, can we look into this and make sure that... So apparently the Innovation and Sustainable Development Committee has the delegated... the term of reference for council communications. I would have thought communicating with the community would be within... Can we check that out and just make sure that it is coming to the right place?
I just think a major IT project rollout feeding into a community committee is bizarre, for lack of a better word.
Well, there are two aspects to it, one of which is the financial and risk considerations, as any project, but the benefit to council in terms of its interaction with its community and the benefit to the community, I do believe would fit.
That's the outcome, but this is around the monitoring from a governance perspective.
All right, can we ask Carleen to pick that up and just make sure that we've got it in the right place, and maybe just to circulate something around all councillors that lines up the work that's been done with the term of reference of the relevant committee.
Be taken from Phil's committee, but perhaps a feed into the audit and risk then in parallel.
Yeah, let's get an answer to this. We can't resolve it here today, because if it does belong at Phil's committee, then that's where it should go. We're not going to have a review of the terms of reference and so on at this meeting now, but we'll certainly get the information back from Carleen as to where it should be reported to. Yeah. And if it isn't able to be picked up, as I'm suggesting, in terms of the interaction with the community at one committee, so the outcomes part of it, and from a risk management point of view at either audit and risk or finance and performance, then that's something we might choose to do something about.
Yeah, I think we've done that.
I think we can pick up the spirit of your question, but let's find out what the status quo is first and what the opportunities within that are.
Happy.
All right, great. Okay, so Yanni and then back to Vicky. Yep, Yanni.
Thank you. I think the finance and performance, we're starting to get better performance quarterly monitoring reports on certain topics, and I think IT might be one that we could easily look at. So I think there is room there. Just two questions. One is it possible to get a copy of the Christchurch Northern Corridor plans for Cranford Street? based on what went to the Environment Court versus what we're actually doing. And I know this was a question raised last year when there was quite a lot of media interest and quite a lot of concern in the community. So this is on the report, page 157, where it talks that we've already started construction, but I still haven't seen the difference in the two plans, and I'd just like to understand what the differences, and also if a report's coming back to us to approve those designs, or whether that's already happened.
I can't respond to that. I don't know, Dave, if you've got any comments on that? Dave?
Sorry, I was reading something else. Sorry, what was the question?
Christchurch Northern Corridor, are there differences in two plans, and who has oversight of that?
We have got people sitting on the board of that, so it's actually controlled by the board of the Alliance. And yeah, Richard Osborne, Head of Transport, sits on that board representing us, so he's got full oversight of it. He's working with the communications and the...
So is it NZTA?
It's an NZTA contract, yes, but it's an alliance because it incorporates 10% of our work downstream, and it's an alliance between NZTA, ourselves, and the contractor.
So the media, there was a suggestion that we may be taken to court if we don't follow the Environment Court design. Fletcher's were getting involved, and so Fletcher Building have asked around the on-street parking. So we've had a very high-level memo that didn't actually address the question that I put in last year around, can we just see what the two designs are, and then can we get some information back on who's actually approving the designs? Because normally Cranford Street would come through council, like we've just had Hallsville
I
Junction.
don't think there was two designs.
Okay, can we get an answer from Dave?
The consortium is in consultation with those groups just doing there, because basically the if you look at the plans that went to Environment Court, they just generally had a note on the side of parking. Now we are going through the detailed design with those neighbours. There's quite complicated out there. There's play centres out there. There's so there's quite an extensive consultation system going there. At the end of the day, I will have to talk to Richard around the actual final process of signing off that design, and I can come back.
I think
to
that would be
memo.
useful.
Yeah, so if you can circulate that memo when you come back around all councillors so that we've got an awareness of the answers to the questions that Jan is asking, that'll be great.
And then the second question is in regards to the strategy, strategic policy. I'm just wondering when the council laws are going to be able to sign off on a strategy and planning work program for the year. And, you know, I think we've got a level of service where we're supposed to do that every year. And I don't think we've seen one for quite a few years. And I'm just, I guess, interested in how we're working through what is going to happen versus what's not, and how we at a governance level actually sign off on that. So I think last time we advised that
the strategic priorities
to the ELT.
You're not talking about the strategic priorities referenced in my report. You're talking about something else.
Well, I would have thought that the strategy and planning work program should be aligning to our strategic priorities.
And it does.
And previously, I think we've been told that that's possibly a reason why it hasn't happened to date. But I just want to understand. You know, I find it hard for us at a governance level not to know what the strategy and planning work program is for a year, and how we can add or subtract or know what's happened, what's changed.
So it's not part of this report. You need to start looking at this. Try and look first at the service plan for that area as part of the LTP.
So the LTP would be, so if we were wanting to dig deeper into exactly what was proposed to be delivered, then the LTP would be the place to look at
We've
that.
got a current level of service that we're supposed to sign off on a strategy and planning work program every year.
Right. So given that that's not a part of this report, I mean, not saying that the question isn't one that we would want an answer to, but given that it's not a part of this report, that's maybe something we should take offline. Adair.
But it's ELT,
sorry, just...
There's a workshop next week, Councillor Johansson, on that, and the report is due to come to council on the 22nd of March.
Right. Thank you. Great,
okay,
thank you.
fantastic.
All right, and then Vicky, finally back to you, and I'm keen to move on because we're taking quite a bit of time on a number of these items.
Just the land relation fund, I wonder if we want to get a little pick for it, or if we want to use on it to do a study, story on it, because it closes this weekend.
Yes.
And I don't know that lots of people know
Yeah, certainly happy to do that. Promote it a bit more. And certainly through the community boards would be great.
So something on Newsline? Yep, great.
I wonder if it might stay open a couple of weeks, given that a lot of groups don't get down there.
And also, just we had the fantastic briefing from Civil Defence around the new model, and they were going to go out and engage with the community. But I would tend to concur that I just think it's almost like a bit premature because there's still a lot of work engaging on that new model that we haven't even got through yet.
So this might be the first phase.
Yeah, if we could do that, that would be great. Okay, fantastic, thank you. So, resolution in front of us to receive the Chief Executive's report, which I'm happy to move. Pauline Coss is happy to second. All those in favour? Against? That's carried.